What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Lex Selectors. Today it is our championship review for match day 37. Wow, do we have a lot to talk about? Controversial refereeing decisions, humongous results in the top and the bottom of the championship. We've also got 12 midweek games to predict as well. We have got a lot on our plate today. If you guys want to see the updated standings of the Let's Selectors Football Prediction League, make sure you check out my latest community post that I released just a couple of hours ago. And it was a tough game week to predict. There was not many people that got more than 10 points at all. It was very difficult to predict. I only got one correct score in the end, which was Blackpool and Swansea. If you guys like what you see, please give the video a like. It does really help the channel. Let's aim for 20 likes. I'd be unbelievably appreciative. Please hit that subscribe button if you've not done so, because it does really help the growth of the channel. We're now aiming for 1,100 subscribers as soon as we can, and please share this channel as well to as many people as you can, because that's how we grow together as a community. But without any further ado, let's start reviewing what happened in this weekend's games. Let's start off with Friday's game between West Brom and Huddersfield, and this result right there really typifies what the championship is all about. It ended 2-2, but in the 80th minute, I was feeling so comfortable that Huddersfield were going to finish second place and have no fear of Bournemouth catching up with them. They were 2-0 up and were extremely comfortable. I mean, West Brom just showed the vulnerability that they had, especially with Sam Johnstone. I don't know what's gone on with him, but he made a mistake in the first goal, just really inexcusable for him, really. He just literally got out-pressed by Danny Ward, and that made it 1-0. For 2-0 was really good play actually by Huddersfield. Lewis O'Brien forcing a pretty substandard save by Johnstone, and he parries it straight to Danny Ward, who taps it in to make it 2-0 to Huddersfield. But I did not know when Andy Carroll went on that pitch, he was really going to make a difference. I mean, the first goal that West Brom had was fortuitous. It's one of the many controversial points. Did Sorba Thomas concede a penalty? For me, I don't think it was a penalty. His foot wasn't really anywhere near Alex Mowatt's head. I understand it's a high foot, and that's probably why he was penalised. But Carl Grant stepped up, and that made it 2-1. And literally less than a minute later, in West Brom's last attack, Garner Hickman in the right-hand side finds Kipre, and Andy Carroll with a header makes it 2-2. And honestly, both teams could have won it at the end. Carl Grant had an effort one-on-one where he hit it on the crossbar, and Anewin had an effort cleared off the line by Andy Carroll as well. So, unbelievable game. It was very entertaining for a Friday night game. You don't really get that often with many West Brom games these days. It's a pretty bad result for both of them. West Brom would have wanted to try and push up the table. Huddersfield would have wanted to have an increased gap on the teams in the top six. Unfortunately, that teams in the top six did lose this weekend. It's a bit of a blow for Huddersfield, but they could potentially see it as 1 point gained, but it could have been 3 had they held on there. Next game was a bit controversial as well. It ended 1-1 between Barnsley and Fulham. Another controversial penalty decision. This one I felt was even more controversial than the one with Sorba Thomas and Alex Moore. So Carlton Morris does very well originally to rob the ball off Tosin Adebayo, but for me, it goes down way too easily. It's not a penalty in my book. The referee even paused and wasn't too sure, but I think he got influenced by the scream for the Barnsley crowd and the players, and he gave the penalty. Carlton Morris stepped up, he scored. It was a nice penalty to make it 1-0. And a crucial goal line clearance from Tim Ream really stopped Barnsley from scoring anymore, because I think if Barnsley went 2-0 up at half time, it would have been very difficult for Fulham to get back into this. And Barnsley defended very well. They eventually gave way in the 86th minute when Harry Wilson produced an unstoppable bit of quality in the top right-hand corner past Collins. That made it 1-1, and ultimately is a bit more of a blow for Barnsley, because they definitely would have wanted 3 points to try and increase their chances of getting out of the relegation zone. Fulham are still pretty much safe. I would say, from all the teams around them. I think they will still cruise into first place. But if they want to beat Reading's point record, they can't avoid any more dropped points, because now the maximum points they can get is 107 points. So Fulham definitely are going to have a flawless run if they want to break Reading's point record. Next game we saw at St Andrews ended as a 0-0 draw. Now, what I felt is that Hull were the team creating more of a chances near the beginning of the end, but both teams didn't really look all that clinical. There was only one really close opportunity which went in the way for Birmingham. Niall Taylor from about 5 yards out having a small flick on, but Ingram with a really big reflex save manages to keep the ball from going across the line. But apart from that, chances were very few and far from between, and both teams, you can tell that they both have some potential there, but they're just missing something that's making them to be a top team in the Championship. I think Birmingham will be glad that defensively they've looked a little bit better, especially in the second half. Hull, they've not scored in 4 of their last 6 games, so Hull definitely need to work on going forward in their next games. And then what a robbery we had in Ewood Park. Blackburn 0, Bristol City 1. If you looked at those stats and you said that Bristol City took all 3 points, you'd be lying to yourself. I mean, I don't know how Blackburn, for one, didn't even score a goal. For what I will say, Dan Bentley in goal, absolutely unbelievable. He'd be up there for player of the weekend. He was absolutely brilliant, and honestly, I felt his performance got into the head of the players. The big opportunity fell to Blackburn when they were awarded a penalty, and I felt that one was a bit more stonewalled than the others. I felt it was a penalty. Bradley Dack stepped up, and he was playing in his first game, I think, in over a year since he sustained that cruciate ligament injury. He stepped up, and I tend to see him being very confident with penalties, but this one, he was not confident at all. Bentley made a very comfortable save. The controversy in that one is that Tim Close was definitely in the penalty area when the penalty was taken, so should there have been a retake? Potentially. And what happened there is that Blackburn, after missing that big chance, Bristol City, with one of their very few chances of the game, Joe Williams, looks like he tries to shoot it, but it was an awful shot, but it turned out to be an amazing cross to Andrew Weimann, who volleys it first time in the net past Kaminsky to make it 1-0. It's one of the flukiest, scrappiest goals you'd seen, but the biggest in qualities as well. It's jam on toast, but Bristol City would take it. It's their first away win this year. Blackburn, they've only scored 1 goal their last 9 games. They're really struggling, clearly, with the absence of Ben Brereton Diaz. They really got to try and step up and take more of their chances, because they've now fallen down to 5th, and within a couple of weeks, they could start slipping out for top 6. Next game, we saw Blackpool beat Swansea by 1-0. It felt like a very comfortable win for Blackpool in the end. I think they were the better team. Swansea only had 1 shot in target in that entire game, and it was a good save as well by Grimshaw when he was needed. The goal was very, very early, and I think it really did decide the game as well. It was poor defending though. Corner from Charlie Kirk, and no one marking Gary Medine. The amount of freedom that he had, he just simply headed the ball into the net. No one marking him, made it 1-0, and that was all it was. Poor defending really cost Swansea there, and those tiny margins do make a difference. They've got to be switched on from minute 1 to minute 90, and I felt Swansea managed the game a little bit better, but Blackpool, I think with their chances, definitely should have taken a couple more. I think it definitely should have been a bigger scoreline based on the quality of chances, but they'll take all 3 points. As with Swansea, once again, it's just not creating enough away from home for me. Next, we saw Bournemouth beat Derby by 2-0. This one really did surprise me, especially with the controversy. I mean, I saw the penalty incident. I did see the penalty incident, and for me, that one was a clearer penalty than what we had with Barnsley and with West Brom Huddersfield. So, the fact that the referee didn't give a penalty, I feel he felt that the player just kind of dived. I think he felt he dived. I mean, if he dived, then why did he book him either? But I felt the way that the player went down there, I think he felt that he didn't actually go down intentionally. But I don't know. But when I saw the replay, there was most definitely contact, and there should have been a penalty in my opinion. But Bournemouth, for me, actually did create better chances than what Derby did. Derby, I think, were okay at holding the ball, but in terms of creating chances, they weren't great at all. Bournemouth got the first goal from Dominic Solanke. Brilliant work actually for him to get the goal. And then for the second goal, it was a blistering run that Solanke managed to start off with. It was saved, but then no one's marking Jamal Lowe. Simple tap in, 2-0 to Bournemouth. And that's a crucial win because it now puts them into second. I still think Bournemouth could even be a little bit better. But I think my standards are very, very high with Bournemouth based on the signings they've made. With Derby, it's 4 defeats in their last 6. They can't afford to keep losing games like this because now they're going to run out of opportunities to try and overtake Reading, that they've got to try and catch up if they want to try and get out of the bottom 3. Next game in the Cardiff City Stadium, it ended Cardiff 0, Preston 0. I can't decide which game was worse. Was it the one between Birmingham and Hull, Cardiff or Preston, or the game I will be talking about, Millwall and Middlesbrough? This game for me, maybe this was slightly better. I think both teams were a little bit more even in this game. There were more chances being made in that game. There was more quality saves being made. Smithies and Iverson made both a really good save each. I think the closest chance was that Daniel Johnson chance. But really, apart from that, it was a game that really equaled, both teams, and I think a draw was a fair result. It was just a shame that the draw was a 0-0 draw, and Preston, who would have had to travel all that way to Wales, would have not seen any goals come from this game. But it stretches both of these teams' unbeaten runs, which I think both would be really, really happy with at the moment, and both really don't have a lot to play for anyway, so it did have that pre-season / end of the season vibes, so I'm hoping we're not going to see too many of those games with both of these teams going forward. Then what an unbelievable result for Coventry in the CBS Arena. Coventry 4, Sheffield United 1. Unbelievable scenes. Coventry have beaten 2 of the recently relegated teams from the Premier League by 4 goals to 1. They've now got to try and do the same thing to when they have to play West Brom actually very, very soon. Now, what I will say, I mean, they conceded to Sanderberg at, near the start of the game. It was the 16th minute when they conceded their goal, and it really came from just poor defending. And I think it started with a corner, and then no one was able to defend it. Burge with a header, 1-0. But 4 minutes later, Gyökeres, straight in the other end of the pitch, scored. And I think it went over, Jack Robinson. And then Gyökeres just charged through 1-on-1, past Frodingham, and made it 1-1. And just a comedy of errors really, really did not help Sheffield United at all. And I think that really gave Coventry a load of confidence. And of course, Mark Robins was actually not in the dugout at all. He was tested positive for COVID-19. So the players put in one hell of a performance with Mark Robins not being there. Callum O'Hare got 2. I mean, one of them was very scrappy. I mean, I think Foderingham made a mistake, tried to push it out, and then it just literally just scrambled past the line. And then Matty Godden even scored a 4th where he was unmarked. Literally, the defensive structure for Sheffield United was all over the place, and they've got to really, really improve on that if they want to be in the top 6. They're still in the top 6, but I think with a couple of really, really bad games away from home recently, losing to Millwall and now losing 4-1 to Coventry, Sheffield United may not be as strong as most people think, so they've got to be very careful, Sheffield United, especially if they do have a chance to get out into the Premier League for the first time of asking. The final 0-0 of this weekend is between Millwall and Middlesbrough. You would argue that this game was probably the worst one, but both of these teams actually hit the woodwork. So both teams had some really strong chances. Now, the chance came for Middlesbrough when Tavernier had a free kick which came off the crossbar. Millwall, I think for me, actually did better at creating chances. They did have less shots on target, but they did overall have a couple more shots than Middlesbrough. I think they definitely had a lot more spaces. There was one chance that Benakofobe had where he did so well to get past his defender. He just had to shoot on target and it was a goal, but he skies it over the goal. If you're missing chances like that, you're really going to halt your team's progress. I think this is definitely a blow to Middlesbrough, who definitely would have capitalised having 3 points in this weekend, following the likes of Sheffield United and Luton losing this weekend. So it's 1 point gained, but very similar to what I talked about with Huddersfield. Could have been 3, and that would have made so much more difference. With Millwall, they're still within the mix in terms of potentially being a chaser for top 6, but this is 2 games in a row now where they've not scored a goal. They have to try and start getting their goal scoring form back if they don't want to start slipping down the table again. Nottingham Forest completely cruised past Reading, beating them by 4 goals to 0. Easy does it. Keenan Davis scores in 17 seconds. Unbelievable. Literally the first move of the game, and the fact that Reading weren't even switched on in that moment there, it was definitely going to be a mauling, and that is exactly what happened. Keenan Davis scored another. Ryan Yates, who's just extended his contract with Nottingham Forest today, scored another goal, who's had a brilliant season, Ryan Yates. I think it's his best goal contributing season he's ever had. And San Saric ending the goal scoring in the 80th minute to make it 4-0, a blistering counter-attack to get to San Saric's goal. Reading really only had one meaningful chance for me, and they barely competed. On the ball, they just barely had it. And for Stephen Cooper to have 61% of the ball is not natural. It's not often. And you've got to really question your team's capability if Cooper's having that much of the ball and having those amount of chances against you. 10 shots that Forest had with 5 on target. They were extremely clinical, and I think Forest are a really big favourite for getting into the top 6. They've not quite reached those levels in the top 6 yet, but if they keep those performances going, give it 2-3 games, I think they'll be up there with Reading. 3 defeats in a row. This is 4 games that Paul Ince has had, and 3 of those games have ended up in a defeat. And they're lucky in a way that Derby have faltered their form as well. Barnsley, however, started to catch up with them. Even Peterborough are now starting to close the gap onto Reading. So Reading, if they carry on not winning like this, give it a couple of game weeks, then they'll be literally fighting for survival. Next, between Peterborough and Stoke, and it's back-to-back draws for Peterborough. Could this potentially be a start of an unbeaten run for them? I personally feel draws aren't going to cut it with Peterborough. If you look at their position, they are 6 points off safety. It's not entirely impossible for Peterborough, but this has shown that Stoke, I don't know what is going on with them. They've not won in their last 7 games now, and away from home, they've not won an away game in their last 6. There's a lot of questions now being asked about Michael O'Neill. And that's a real shame for me, because I think the signings he got a tune with them right at the start. But then when players started returning back and they've got to try and meld them together, all of a sudden now, Stoke are just not getting the results that they were getting right when those signings were first introduced. All of a sudden now, from a team looking like they can actually compete maybe in the race to the top 6, they're now looking like, they're just going to be stuck in the bottom half of the table. And Stoke City are much more than this. They definitely need to try and make a push to try and get back into the Premier League. Peterborough got their 2 goals from Johnson Clark-Harris. 1 goal was an absolute stunning goal. The second one came from the penalty. I mean, both teams had a penalty. Lewis Baker scored his penalty for Stoke with a handball. Contentious for me. I think that was a little bit harsh, although Stoke did have a penalty appeal, which I think should have been given to their way, so maybe honours even. And in terms of Peterborough's penalty, it was a blistering run, and I think, yeah, it was a penalty. Johnson Clark-Harris scored in the 91st minute to make it 2-2. I think a draw was slightly, just very, very slightly deserved. You would think that Stoke with 14 shots deserved it, but to only have 2 shots on target, it's unacceptable. Their 2 shots on target with their 2 goals. So it's clear to me that Stoke create, but they really do not put the ball in the back of the net, and that's a really big problem. Peterborough, they've been clinical for once, and when you're clinical, voila, you get points on the board. They now just got to hope that Grant McCann can mastermind an unbeaten run for the side, because maybe there's a very, very, very small chance that Peterborough can survive if they can get themselves together. The final game to predict was yesterday's game between Luton and QPR, and lo and behold, QPR win a game for the first time since those back-to-back defeats to Blackburn and Cardiff. And I think that really was a crucial win. For me, this was their most crucial win of the season. They were playing against 6th placed Luton Town. This was the first game that QPR were outside of the top 6 this season. But this shows the mentality of this QPR side, that they are really destined and really determined to get into those top 6 places at the end of the season. They fell behind to a sucker punch blow. Cameron Drem scores. I mean, there was maybe a contentious handball decision in the build-up to the goal by Jordan Clark, and David Marshall should be a routine save. It squirms through his arms, through the goal. I mean, that made it 1-0 in the 38th minute, and QPR could have gone to half-time with their heads down and, felt very injustice, because I felt, for me, QPR did have the closest to scoring, but Luton did have two big moments involving one of the goals being disallowed for offside and another offside decision where Alan Campbell missed an absolute sitter. I thought Luton were great in the first half. Second half, I don't know what Warburton said, but his team really came out fighting. Andre Gray won a penalty. Really silly challenge by Naismith in my opinion. Great penalty by Gray to make it 1-1. And then Rob Dickey in the 80th minute, an in-swinging corner by Chris Willock. You know, it's crucial that Chris Willock plays because everything he does turns out to be a goal contribution, whether it's a goal or an assist. He assisted that time. It came with Rob Dickey's shoulder, so maybe a bit controversial, but it's, you know, a shoulder. It's not your arm, so he can score with that. That made it 2-1 QPR. And following this win, QPR are now back up to 4th place and in the top 6. Luton now just fall just outside. They do have games in hand though, so they definitely do have a little advantage on that. But this top 6 race is going to go down to the wire. So guys, that is my review of all of the Championship games. This is what the table is looking like after this weekend's games. Fulham 12 points clear of 2nd place Bournemouth. Huddersfield and now QPR return to the top 6. Blackburn and Sheffield United fall 1 place. And in terms of the teams in danger, Reading only 4 points clear now of Barnsley. Derby still 5 points behind Reading. And Peterborough have now closed the gap to Reading by 6 points. So guys, to end the video, I'm going to start predicting the midweek games. Make sure guys you predict those midweek games as well, because that is how you're going to be involved in the Let's Selectors Football Prediction League. Barnsley Bristol City is the first one, and I feel for me Bristol City aren't really destined to win many away games. Barnsley have looked better at home. I don't think they were too great against Fulham. They were great defensively, but going forward, I wasn't too sure. I think we could see goals in this one. I think Bristol City are a little bit open. I'm going to say a 2-2 draw, actually. Birmingham and Middlesbrough. Middlesbrough have not been great away from home. 3 defeats and a draw in their last 4. Birmingham have been a bit hit and miss. They've shown good promise going forward, but their defence doesn't give me a load of confidence. So maybe Middlesbrough could take advantage of that. I'm going to say 2-1 away to Middlesbrough. Blackburn Derby. I was very heavily thinking a 0-0 draw. But based on Derby's very bad away form, which is 6 away defeats in a row, I'm going to go for a narrow 1-0 win to Blackburn for them to score their first goal in 4 matches. Bournemouth and Reading, who knows what this scoreline is could be. This could be anything. I think Bournemouth will win quite comfortably. I'm going to say 3-0 to Bournemouth. West Brom Fulham. This one could be a 0-0 draw. It's another West Brom game live on Sky Sports, which has not made people very happy. Although the last game West Brom played was actually quite entertaining on Sky, which was their 2-2 draw against Huddersfield. I think this one will be close. I was very much thinking of a 1-1 draw, but I'm going to edge Fulham for 1-0. I don't think there'll be many goals. Now to Wednesday's games. Blackpool, Sheffield United. For me, 1-1. I think Sheffield United have not been great away from home. I think Blackpool have been quite good at home. But I think naturally, based on the squads, I think they'll cancel each other out. Cardiff, Stoke. I'm going to go for a 0-0 draw. I don't predict many 0-0 draws, so I'm going to predict a 0-0 draw in this one. Coventry versus Hull. This is a must-win game for Coventry if they want to still be in the race for the top 6. I think Coventry might edge this. Despite Hull being unbeaten away in their last 4, I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Coventry. Luton and Preston. This one may have an end-of-the-season vibe for Preston's sake, but Luton would definitely be wanting to win this one as they still have a possibility of getting into the top 6. I think they'll cancel each other out. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, though. Preston don't have a great record against Luton. Millwall, Huddersfield. Millwall are a tough team to play against at home. Huddersfield have naturally been really good. Of course, they're still 16 games unbeaten. They just find a way, you know, not to lose a game. And I think they'll still continue that. Although Millwall have been a banana skin for many teams this season. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Forest and QPR. Forest have got a great record against QPR. And I think Mark Warburton will get an unhappy return against Nottingham Forest. And Nottingham Forest must win this if they want to have a chance at the top 6 for me. So I'm going to go for 2-1 Nottingham Forest. I think they'll deliver. And finally, Peterborough, Swansea. Peterborough could get something, you know, because Swansea away from home, I don't really back them. Their only away win in their last 6 games was against West Brom. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw again. I think Peterborough will be the king of draws now, and I think they'll start trying to go for a tiny run near the end of the season. But that is my predictions and my thoughts of this weekend's Championship games. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That will have to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys liked what you saw, please give the video a like and just tremendously help the channel. Keep your eyes out because I may be streaming later today on the weekend's games for the championship. It's the last weekend's based amount of games before the international break, so it'll be my last stream for quite some time. So make sure, guys, you do check me out for that later today. Please hit the subscribe button if you've not done so. It does really help the growth of the channel, and please share this channel to as many people as you can. All of that really helps. But now wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary for signing up this video, and as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.